Did you rub my lamp?
1,000 generations to the Nina.
Here we go.
This is Kyle Klymans on behalf of FilmSpeak, and it is my privilege to sit down with celebrated auteur ATOM EGOYAN to discuss his upcoming film, Seven Veils. First of all, Mr. EGOYAN, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Pleasure
So,
to be
so you filmed Seven Veils concurrently with your seventh restaging of Strauss's Salome in 2023. What was the most challenging part of balancing two different projects in two different mediums, which also overlap each other?
schedule. I would say the most challenging thing was schedule. That the opera had to, we couldn't change the dates of the opera. It was fixed. It had to actually be on stage at that time. But the way film financing works is that you're often shifting stuff or you're kind of accommodating schedules, but we couldn't. We were locked in. And also, Amanda had to be in town to shoot it on those dates. So she had just won her Emmy for The Dropout, so she was really busy, and so miraculously, all of that stuff had to line up. Plus, there was the lingering threat of COVID was still in the air. We lost the DOP for the first few days because they had COVID. One of the producers, so it was kind of manic. But I knew it either had to happen at that moment or it would never happen at all. Um, it's just one of those things you plunge into. You don't think about it too much because it's a bit paralyzing. But I was just so consumed with making this happen. Like it had to happen. It had to happen. And I think there were a lot of people who thought I was delusional, but somehow we made it all work out.
What was the most unexpected hurdle that you faced while making the film?
Well, there were a lot, actually. I mean, I would say at a personal level, like having directed many operas, there was a situation with one of the opera singers themselves that was resisting the idea. And I thought that they would all just buy into this concept of singing in the opera and also being in the film. But one of them didn't, and they had a major part in the film, so I had to reduce that part. It wasn't Salome, it was one of the minor characters, but it was like, okay, that was a major readjustment. And then there was the fact that, as you know, there was as I said, the DOP got COVID, and so on the first day of the shoot, which was the most challenging day, so thankfully another person who kind of I knew was able to come in and fill that role. It's filmmaking is incredibly stressful because things have to happen in order for you to then have the joy of working on the actual process of shooting. So you're expecting money to be in place, you're expecting a lot of things to just show up, and it doesn't happen um, on its own. Like there are a lot of people working really hard, but even so, there are things that you don't expect.
Mhm.
It's a bit like strategizing for any like battle. Like you have to kind of have different scenarios and revert to them if things are not working in a certain way.
You've mentioned in a previous interview that the opera world, just to dive a little into the content of Seven Veils, you've mentioned before that the opera world is one of those places where transgressive behavior might still be enabled. Now, is there anything, given Seven Veils, is there anything you hope that the film will add to, for lack of a better term, will add to the conversation?
That's a great question. I think it shows that people don't necessarily react to workplace violence in a way that we imagine. Like they don't necessarily, go to human resources and do the right things in terms of how we would think we now understand the problem. That sometimes they find other forms of restorative justice. Like there are things that they feel will better address what they're experiencing, and that sometimes the institutions themselves are not as welcoming. It was interesting talking with one of the actresses who had experienced something on a set and found that there was like actually resistance from maybe the producers to deal with it because it's very cumbersome and it kind of like everything grinds to a halt, and it's, there's always an attempt to try and find other ways, maybe, and sometimes those other ways are unacceptable, or they might be problematic for different reasons, right? So I was trying to address the complexity of how people actually deal with these circumstances when they occur, based on stories I had heard, and and not to be programmatic, like saying, oh, this is what should have happened. Like very often human beings are complex and they react in ways that are driven by other agendas, right? We see this all. I'm being a bit vague because you have to see the film to understand what we're talking about. So I don't want to give away the film, but I just wanted to show how nuanced this can become.
Well, if someone can portray the nuance and complexity of humanity, it's definitely you. Speaking of that, your filmography, it's got a number of themes which you return to regularly, not necessarily in the same way, but you examine these similar themes through the emotional journeys of your characters, whether it's the matter of truth or trauma and reality, basically, perception of reality. How much would you say that your previous films shape your next one?
You don't want to repeat yourself, and yet you can't help but kind of be drawn to certain things, and certain questions, and that there are obsessions. I mean, as an artist, you have obsessions, and I find that this idea of the truth of a circumstance often being a negotiation between two characters' conflicting version of events. Like I find that, that there is this process of negotiating that. And sometimes it's a negotiation with my viewer as well, like, showing them, different scenes from different perspectives, and that it's not as simple as all that. Of course, in these days, you actually want the truth to be more simple, but that's not going to be the case. And so, and maybe the transgressions against reality become more extreme. And so these conversations seem a little nuanced, but it's where I locate my dramas. Like I keep coming back to that idea. I maybe because I was raised with these, like, large historical kind of issues that are not resolved, and then combine that with family issues or love issues that are sort of still being resolved. But it is something of an obsession, and I can see that. But I'm not thinking about that as I'm not kind of seeing how it relates to my other work. Like I think that's for other people to do. At this point, I can kind of see it as a body of stuff, but you're not thinking about it as a body of work as you're making it. You're just, you have the opportunity to tell these stories, and sometimes to, work with exceptional people, and that's really what's driving it all.
Having just finished Seven Veils, your 18th feature film, congratulations, by the way. Um, how do you think filmmaking in Canada has gotten better and worse?
Well, it's become a lot more possible to make super low budget films, but it's challenging to get them seen properly, and that there is like I really support these programs, like with Telefilm being able to support talent to watch, and that you don't need to have all of the industrial support that you would need for a larger budget. And that's exciting. And I've seen some amazing films made that way, but it's just a question of like how do you get them to reach audiences? And that's a challenge because we are working in a very saturated environment, and there's a lot of stuff to watch. But I think that, when I watched these features coming out of this program, I've just been really excited by the depth of like talent that we have here. Like it's incredible, and new voices and diversity and all of that is part of this program. So I support that, and I feel like when I was starting my career, you had to work with such tiny budgets, and work with arts councils, and it's been step by step. I think that a lot of filmmakers now want to fast forward and have that breakthrough, but it often takes like a diligence, and you have to have super thick skin. But being able to use these incredible technologies, the digital technologies, and also being able to have some control over distribution. I mean, it is true that you can watch a film now, and not have to wait for distributors to show it. You can kind of just put it online. But then, how do you get people to watch it when there's so many choices? I don't have an answer to that. But I do think that it's incredible to me when you see stuff that's able to break through, and to see filmmakers take charge of that is always exciting.
For my part, I'm always excited for a new ATOM EGOYAN film whenever it comes out. So thank you again as well for sitting down with me to discuss Seven Veils. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.